Hello again, and welcome back to another Eduonix tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to discuss a key feature in Adobe Photoshop. That is, working with layers. If Photoshop were to be a big dinner, layers would probably be the steak and potatoes. There are many other features within Photoshop, but none of them can hope to play such a big role in the design process. While they're not a feature exclusive to Photoshop, layers are the foundation upon which Photoshop stands. Layers allow you to stack and rearrange any object, effect, or adjustment you want. Not only does this allow you to create complex graphics, it also allows you to play with your image without making commitments on its overall composition. This makes layers the most fundamental part of the design process. To start off, we'll open some documents that we can use to test our layers. I'm going to import some photos from my desktop by going up to the menu bar and then selecting File, Open. I have 3 different pictures here, and I want to open them all in Photoshop at the same time. There are several ways we can do this. The first way is to click in this white space outside the thumbnails and drag this blue rectangle over them to select them. This way of selecting files is very straightforward. You just click and hold to draw a blue rectangle around what you'd like to select. You can confirm that these are selected by checking below in the File Name box and see that the names of all 3 of our pictures are listed inside. I'm not going to open these pictures just yet. I'd like to show you a couple more ways to select multiple files. So, to deselect them, I will just click once again in this white space. The next way is to click the first file, press and hold the Shift key on your keyboard, then go all the way over to your last file, click it, then release Shift. Using the Shift key allows you to select every file between the first and the last one that you click. There's one more method I want to show you, so I'm going to click the white space again to deselect these files. Another way is to use the Control key to select individual files, one after the other. So, press and hold the Control key on your keyboard. Then we can click the first, the last, and the middle if we want. Confirm that the files are in the file name box below, and then click Open to proceed. Now Photoshop has opened all 3 of our images. You can see them represented by the tabs on top, and switch between them at your will. If you pay attention to the Layers panel for each document, you can see that each file has one layer, representing the image that we see in our workspace. I would like to combine all of these separate documents into my one document with multiple layers. There are several ways to do this. Probably the easiest way to do it would be to make sure that we have our Move tool selected. That's the topmost tool on the Tools panel. Then click the image in our workspace and drag it to our first tab. As you drag the image onto the workspace of our first document, you may notice a change in our mouse cursor. There's a plus sign next to it now. This is your indicator that you're dragging a new layer with your mouse. I'm going to go ahead and release my mouse key to drop the new image onto my workspace. When I drop this, it's just going to drop it according to wherever I have my mouse, and not centered onto my workspace like I want it to be. I'm going to redo this in a way that drops the image directly in the center where I want it. But first, I'll delete my layer by going over to the Layers panel. You can see that my new layer is already selected. I'm going to click the layer in the blank space beside it and drag it down to the trash can icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. Then I'll release my mouse button to delete the layer. Now I'll go back up to my last document tab. Once again, with the Move tool still selected, I will drag the image over to my first document tab. Now, while holding my mouse over the workspace, I will press and hold the Shift key on my keyboard before releasing my mouse. This has placed my new image perfectly in the center of my first document, and you can see it labeled as Layer 1 in my Layers panel. I'm going to show you another easy way to bring my second document into my first one. But since we've already copied the third document into the first one, we now have no need to keep that tab around. So I'll go ahead and click the X on the tab to close it. Now that we just had the second document to worry about, I'm going to copy the contents of its layer and paste them into my first document. To do this, go up to the menu bar and press Select, and then click All right below it. Now we have a bounding box circling the contents of our workspace. This represents that the contents of this layer are selected. Then I'll go up to Edit, then Cut, to remove the contents of this layer. Now I'll go back over to the first document, and then I'll go back up again to the menu bar. I'll click Edit, and then Paste. Now the contents have been cut and pasted onto a new layer in our first document. We're going to be managing these layers within the Layers panel, so it might be a good idea to label them properly. To change the layer name, simply double-click the existing name to highlight and replace the text. I'm going to change this label to Laptop. To see the layer below it, just click the eye icon to the left of the layer thumbnail. Now we are seeing Layer 1. But it's important to realize that we still have our Laptop layer selected, and any changes we make to the layer's contents will affect the Laptop layer, even if we can't see it. Whenever you want to make a change to a layer, check the layer you have selected before proceeding. Now let's double-click the Layer 1 label to rename it to Swimming. Then I'll click the eye icon to the left of the layer thumbnail to make it invisible. But watch what happens when we double-click our bottom layer, named Background. Instead of simply highlighting the layer's label, a new layer dialog box appeared. This happened because this was the original layer when we first opened this document, and by default, Photoshop keeps this layer locked from the beginning. Now I will type a new name, Cityscape, and then click OK. You may notice that our layer's label has changed from the italicized font to this straight font that the other layers have. Also, the lock that was once here on the right is now gone. This is because we have converted this layer from a locked background layer to an unlocked standard layer. If I want to reposition these layers with respect to each other, all I have to do is click and drag one above or below the other. You may notice that a horizontal gray line appears whenever I get close to an edge of another layer. This line represents where the layer will snap to once I release it. But what if I want to blend these layers together so that we can sort of see through them? No problem. The most standard way to blend one layer with another is to control its opacity. Opacity is how visible something is, so the higher the opacity, the more you can see it. Transparency is the exact opposite. The more transparent something is, the less you can see it. If we select our top layer, we can see that there's an option for opacity and that it's at 100% because it's completely visible. We can reduce the opacity by clicking on the opacity text and dragging to the left. Now we can sort of see through this layer to the one below it. I'm going to delete this layer, because I want to show you another neat way that you can blend layers together. To the left of opacity, there's a button that says normal on it. If we click this, it expands to a drop-down menu full of other options. These options are called blend modes, and they change the way the color and exposure behaves on our layer. I'm going to go down and click multiply. You can see that not only does my layer seem more transparent, it is also darker than it used to be. Now I'll go back up to my blend modes again and switch it from multiply to screen. This once again made my layer more transparent, and this time the layer appears much brighter. Now if we go back to blend modes again, this time we'll go all the way down and click divide. We can see that this produces a very different result entirely. I encourage you to play with layers and blending on your own time. It will be a lot of fun, and you'll get a feel for how Photoshop's layers really operate. In the next video, we will begin going over the tools available to us within Photoshop.